What a panel. I feel smarter, I do. The next presentation talks about the customer, and as you know, the customer now wants more. They're passionate. They want to really connect with a product, service, or the company that they decide to use for whatever they need. And up next we have a person that helps his clients meet and exceed those expectations. A very senior executive at Publicis Group, my friend, Mr. Christopher Harrison. Applause, please.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Yeah, I know you can. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. In the very short time that we have together this afternoon, I'm going to share a couple of things for you to think about and cogitate over. So, one of the problems of having a presentation called Great Expectations that I've just realized is that it creates in the minds of the audience a massive expectation. And I can't promise that I will fulfill that. So what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about some things that we discovered through a global research project that we ran about 2 months ago. It's the first time, I think, we've shared this publicly. And I'm just going to talk about 36 months. The reason I'm going to do that is threefold. One, most people don't stay in organizations these days any more than 3 or 4 years, so it doesn't really make sense to talk about what the future holds, because most people are thinking about getting through their appraisal or making sure that they get their bonus in the next 18 months or so. And the other thing is, I found it ridiculous that so many clients were asking, and so many agencies were providing points of view about what the world would look like in 10 years or 20 years' time. And that just struck me as being a bit silly. So I'm going to talk to you about what I'm calling the expectation gap in the next 36 months and beyond. Okay, so it's not just my frivolous take on organizations' inability to retain their executives, and it's not just about silly requests for 20-year views. The notion of time, the dynamic of time, I think is really fundamental. It's no mistake that everyone talks about the rate of change when they talk about disruption, or they talk about the velocity when they talk about transformation. It's because time is actually a fundamental dynamic at play in this whole idea of innovation, transformation, disruption, whichever adjective you would like to choose. And the reason that it's really brought home to us is really on the far end the far right side of the slide, which is really about the rate at which new ideas, new concepts, and new capabilities are introduced, how quickly they're adopted, or in some cases, how quickly they are rejected, disappear, and never see the light of day again. So we're in pretty uncertain times. I don't know about you, but when I wake up in the morning, I don't know who is going to war with who. I don't know who's voting for who. All bets are off about who is going to be in Europe or out of Europe, or whether North Korea and South Korea will find a way of coexisting in the future. Who knows? So it's really uncertain times that we live in. And so just because we like a challenge at Publicis Group, we decided if you come to these kinds of events, or you spend any time in the tech industry, one of the unmistakable takeouts from those sort of encounters is this idea of complexity, of chaos. So you might be sitting there thinking, I want to transform my business, my boss has told me, our team at work have decided that we need to transform and change the way that we do. One of the key challenges that people face is they just don't know what to do. Okay, the willing is there, the intent is there, but they're often not sure as to what they should do. And one of the reasons why they're not sure is because it seems overwhelmingly complex and chaotic. So what we decided to do is, what is it that we could predict? What is it that we could learn from today and the recent past that would give us some confidence that we had some idea of what was coming in the near future? So we took a slightly unorthodox approach to trying to understand this. We talked to the C-suite, we talked to you guys, and we talked to you about what you thought you were doing in terms of your transformation programs and all the money you were spending and all the human resource and the new talent that you were hiring and the new partnerships that you were striking up. And we tried to understand from you, what is it that you felt you had achieved in terms of your transformation program? Then the second thing we did is we spoke to your customers, we spoke to your consumers, and we just wanted to see were both parties on the same page. Okay, the way we did that is we threw these 6 megatrends of disruption at both parties. When we spoke to the C-suite and we spoke to the customers, we said, largely speaking, these are the 6 big megatrends at the moment that are behind or driving this kind of disruption and transformation that we're all having to contend with. And if we're smart, exploit and grow our businesses. Now, you could look at this, say, for example, from a Singapore perspective, and you might say, well, not all of these trends are very prevalent in my country. That's not an issue. This is a global research piece. Also, while I remember, note to self and to you guys, if you want a copy of this research, and I'm just giving you, what am I giving you? What I'm giving you, sorry, back to now, what I'm giving you is just a very, very top line insight into this work. If you're interested in this research, please come and grab me or my colleague John at the back of the room, and we'd be very happy to send it to you. So, let's move on. So, thinking about these trends, thinking about Asia, and thinking about some of the brands, some are new, very new, some are not so new. There are many examples across these trends of disruption, be it new payment methods. I've just come from the Da Vinci room and learned about 2 new payment methods that I didn't even know existed, very in early stages of their startup journey. So this is really about, and I'm sure you know this is all about the kind of new ways in which consumers can transact, save, and invest. The second was on-demand access. So you can imagine the ability to find at your fingertips, largely through mobile phones, accessing and buying and getting your hands on products and services when you want, where you want. And then sharing access, so some really interesting examples, some very interesting examples in the apparel space, where people can now rent handbags for a month or so, rather than fork out 50,000 or, if you're mad enough, or just have too much money, $100,000 for a handbag. So very much around the sharing and renting economy. And then this kind of seamless shopping. There's lots of this that's going on. Most of it, in my opinion, is largely clumsy. But you can all imagine how digital signage plays a part, and the ubiquity of all these kind of different user faces, all these different screens that we are confronted with when we leave our homes, get on the bus or get on the train and go to a shopping mall to do some shopping at the weekends, walking around, sucking in the free aircon. So, and then I think the fifth one, artificial intelligence. You don't need me to talk to you about that, because I'm assuming you are all terribly au fait with AI. And democratized innovation, which is another kind of form of disruption, where people can come in and offer new kinds of services because the platforms offer them an opportunity to collaborate, to deliver a value proposition to customers. The more customers and the more people that participate in those platforms obviously generate this much vaunted and much coveted network effect that makes these things really powerful. So, you can imagine how interesting our conversations were with normal people and with C-suite people when we got them to think about those megatrends of disruption. And what did we discover? Well, we discovered many things. I'm just going to share a couple of them with you now. Disruption is mainstream in the minds and in the lives of the customers. So while we might be thinking about transforming our organizations, we might have set up in-house incubators or startup accelerators, or we might have created innovation labs, or God knows what, all kinds of little pockets of resource that orbit and satellite the main organization. From a consumer's point of view, the disruption is now mainstream. And this is where, for us, it starts to get quite interesting by way of explanation. And what I mean by that is that what we saw, we interviewed C-suite execs in 12 different product and service categories. And what we noticed there is that when we got to speak to their customers' expectations have not necessarily been set or shifted as a result of how they were interacting with the client's category. No, more often than not, the competitor, the one that was making the difference to the customer's expectation, were often brands that are outside the client's category. So if any of you have the fortune/misfortune to have any teenagers at home, what you'll discover is their relationship to brands is wholly different, specifically in terms of how they expect those brands to connect with them and make it easy, okay? Not so in the C-suite. There are, at the bottom you'll see here, there's a little bit of nostalgia, a little whimsical nostalgia for a slower age, a more bucolic age where we weren't living in this rapidly urbanized, alienated environment, more of an environment where we could step out and enjoy the wondrous power of nature. But by and large, what we've started to see is that people who are 35 plus, right, i.e. the non-millennials, they now have essentially the same expectations as the so-called millennials. And that's because everyone is now a millennial. Now, when we first started to put together this research, I jumped on this and I wanted to say, yes, comma, the millennial is dead. And so I lost that argument, and one of my colleagues, actually what I meant to say was my boss said, that's a really negative spin on it, let's think of it in a different way. So hence, everyone is now a millennial. So, and here's the thing, I'm sure if you spend any time reading the marketing press or hanging out with your agencies or just talking to the thought leaders in your world, everyone goes on about millennials. They bang on ad nauseum about millennials. What we have seen over the last 3.5, 4 years is virtually every single brief, I would say almost without exception, says, help us connect with millennials. Help us connect with the next generation of customers and consumers. Now, if I was in business, I'd want to make sure I had a steady flow of people coming into the category and more specifically coming into my brand and into my business. But I think the mistake some people have made is as a result of lazy thinking. And they think this millennial thing is just something that's narrowly defined by age, and it is not. Because as you can see here, the rate at which and the openness that people who are 35 plus have around the kind of expectations they have, how they expect a brand experience to be delivered and sustained, if at all they're interested in that, is akin to what we all thought was just something that was to preserve of these really annoying people that we have to hire and take on graduate training programs that are lazy, can't be managed, want a work-life balance, well, really just want to be paid to go and do what they want to do and all the rest of it. But that's not the case. So there's a little bit of, dare I say, divergence going on here. And I think one of the things that we discovered here is that when we spoke to the C-suite, about 90% of them were really bullish about their ability to meet these new expectations that most of their customers have. And that could be because they're falling for, anybody here study psychology at college? Right? Okay, right, quick detour into undergraduate psychology. So the Dunning-Kruger bias, and this is based on a real story about when a bank robber in America who remembered as a child, as I'm sure you all do, what it was like to take lemon juice and create invisible writing. Do you remember that? Secret writing with lemon juice. So this really smart armed robber, true story, walked into a bank having smeared his face in lemon juice because he believed that the lemon juice would protect him from being identified by the CCTV camera, right? So the psychologist at Columbia University read about this story and said, I wonder whether there's a common phenomena of people mistakenly overestimating or assessing their ability to be much higher than it actually is. And one of the challenges that the C-suite face, and this is where we get to be a bit kind to the C-suite, is that so far a lot of the investment in terms of intellectual capital, human resource, thinking, money, you know, you name it, has largely gone into building their infrastructure. And so the transformation programs that a lot of organizations have rightly embarked upon are largely invisible to their customers, who really want to see how it's going to affect them at the sharp end, at the brand interface, if you like. So, and what's happening in addition to that, to complicate matters slightly, is that the customers, when they experience new forms, if you like, transformative brand experiences that they might have had from Apple and Apple Pay or Uber or God knows what, because those experiences that they've experienced, those are the kinds of experiences that they want to see more of, right? Whereas the C-suite, what they're looking to do is, at the moment, they're really caught up in this kind of infrastructure and this technological aspect of what the brand experience or could be in terms of matching those expectations. And the consumers are a kind of relentless, thankless bunch of people, but they expect this continuous rapid innovation. But what they want is they want it to be really human and they want it to be social. And that partly helps explain why, if you ask consumers to bet on who they think the source of transformation is, what kind of company is going to deliver innovation and transformation, and if you speak to, sorry, did I say consumers? If you speak to the C-suite, they get two different bets being made there. Normal people like us, if you like, consumers, customers, what they expect is it's going to be the usual suspects, the Tencents, the Alibabas, the Googles, the Facebooks, the WeChats, the Snapchats. They expect all of those brands to be the ones that largely drive that innovation. And on the flip side of that, almost in opposition to that almost, the C-suite, which is probably why we've got so many corporates at this event here in Singapore, they're really looking for startups to re-engineer their business. So, and I can understand why they're doing that. And if you are a corporate and you want help doing that, we do have a solution for you at Publicis Group. It's called Next Tech Now. Anyway, I'm going to move on very, very swiftly because I'm running out of time. So, what did we learn? So, disruption is mainstream. I think it's pretty difficult to argue against that now. We're all millennials now. Thank God I'm now a millennial, which is good news. The people that are our source of business, the customers and the consumers, your mums and dads and friends and relatives, they are a little bit skeptical that the corporates, that the multinationals, that the established businesses are really capable of innovating to such an extent that they can meet these new expectations. And whilst we are spending a lot of time and money trying as quickly as possible to transform in order to deliver shareholder value, we might be overestimating our ability to transform, because most of what we transformed so far has been invisible from the customer's perspective. So what do? We start looking for help with that. Hence why there's such a plethora and so many clients now talking to us, and I'm sure other agencies as well, about how they can access this startup world and ecosystem. But at the end of the day, normal people, customers, they're really expecting that it's going to be the usual suspects that deliver, and not necessarily many of us in this room. And with that, that's me. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.